What seems to be unusual about China is that, and I think Ethan Gutmann makes this argument brilliantly in his book, is how the Chinese government have solved two problems at once. They've solved a problem of organ shortage along with a problem of dealing with a quite annoying dissident population by using the one to source the other. And it's done on such a wide level with involvement at all levels of government that it's state sanctioned. It's turned, what Ethan says, it's turned doctors into murderers and used health reasons to persecute and kill a group that they're not happy with. It's extremely difficult to find evidence about what's happening in China because it is such a secretive system. At the moment, however, though, we've got 3 reports that have come out over a period of 10 years. The first in 2006, Bloody Harvest, by David Kilgour and David Mattis, used a wide range of evidence and particularly relied on phone calls and interviews and website scrutiny to look at what was going on in China to establish the nature of the trade there. Then Ethan Gutmann did his investigation called The Slaughter, which was published in 2014. And he used a different methodology. He interviewed people who'd come out of labour camps and put together a very detailed picture, which he fitted into the political background of China, and built up a very compelling story of how the two things had come together, the persecution of the Falun Gong and the rise in transplant medicine. So that was 2 sources of evidence. Following that, in 2016, we've had a new report published called The Update, Bloody Harvest, The Slaughter, The Update, which is available free to download. And this is an exhaustive report, 600 pages with 2,000 references. And in this report, the authors who joined forces, so we've got Mattis, Gutmann and Kilgour, have tried to document the extent of transplant activity in China using a number of innovative methods. So they've looked at the number of hospitals that are licensed to do transplants, the number of hospitals that are not licensed but are nonetheless doing transplants, the numbers of beds in the hospitals, the number of medical staff in the hospitals, reports of how busy the doctors are, reports of bed utilisation rates, and reports of profits being made by transplant in individual hospitals. In terms of withholding credibility from practitioners of Falun Gong just because they're practitioners of Falun Gong, it's an instance of what we call testimonial injustice. It's like not believing someone because of who they are rather than because of what they say and the reasons that what they say might be true. And again, I put it down to the skill of the Chinese government in demonising the practitioners of Falun Gong within China, so that they're, as I understand, can be ostracised or considered to be bad citizens, bad people, and so you shouldn't believe anything they say. But they've also sold that to people who should be able to take a far more critical stance, who haven't been subject to years of Chinese brainwashing, and who should be able to say, okay, it doesn't really matter what this person's spiritual practices are. They're providing me with evidence and I should listen to this evidence and take it at face value initially. Of course, you're sceptical if you think someone's trying to tell a story to further some political ends. But again, as Ethan's explained, there's no evidence that Falun Gong is a cult of any sort. There's no evidence of political action to try and bring down the Chinese government. There's no evidence of anything other than a deep desire to be left alone to practice their spiritual beliefs in peace and to not be locked up and murdered. And so it seems a very unpleasant and evil form of victim blaming to withhold credibility just because people are practitioners. As far as I'm aware from what's been reported in the media is that Professor Jeremy Chapman regarded it as a load of Falun Gong propaganda. I don't think that was the exact words he used, but that was the intent of the words. And I'd read a lot of media at the time, and I can't remember where what article was, but the other article was a spokeswoman for the Chinese government, and it was almost word for word exactly the same as what Professor Chapman said, and that just made me wonder who was briefing him. Well, the appropriate response would be to at least engage with the literature. I think to have a look at it. I don't expect them to get translators and check every single source, but to have a look at what's there and then to engage in a dialogue to say, well, there's a problem with using bed utilisation rates because of this, or actually transplant doctors, do more transplants than that or do fewer, just to look at the different indicators that Mattis, Kilgore and Gutmann have put together, and to say, well, these ones stand up, these ones don't stand up. This is how you could get better information. If they're interested in knowing what's going on in China, they need to be part of the solution in actually identifying what's going on rather than just dismissing attempts. Francis Delmonico said under oath at the US Senate committee hearings that TTS had no access at all to the military hospitals. And I think he said as well that they're aware that they are problematic, or similar words. What TTS needs to do to engage with the report is to let go of the idea that this is Falun Gong propaganda. I think there are enough credible accounts, there are enough questions from credible and multiple sources to say, okay, there seems to be a real problem here and it's a terrible problem. How can we help to try and sort out what is actually going on? Because we can't act effectively unless we know what's going on. I think TTS is somehow, for some reason, convinced by the Chinese government or their representatives that this is propaganda, that it's political, and that TTS doesn't want to get involved in anything that's seen as China's internal politics. But if people are being murdered for their organs, you've immediately got a close connection between transplantation and politics. You can't just say we're only interested in transplantation, not in politics.